Kevin Hamilton, welcome back to the RONJIRU Japan podcast. It has been 6 months since the last time we spoke.
Seems like either half that amount of time or twice it.
Yes.
In the age of Corona, I don't know. I don't have a concept of time.
The whole thing, this entire year has been zombie year. Time has stood still. It's almost like I was thinking about it, and I came up with a metaphor. It's almost like in maybe February-ish. I believe our last discussion was 6 months ago. So it was still a relatively new thing then. But I think that in February, the entire world took a very, very deep breath and then held it and held it and held it and held it. And here we are in December, last month of the year, and people are struggling because they've been holding their breath since February and not ready to let it out yet, and nothing really to breathe in. It's kind of like the fact that Corona is a respiratory virus is kind of, in a way, ironic, because people are still holding their breath, waiting for whatever's coming next, and nothing is coming next. We could have the same discussion today as we had 6 months ago.
Well, I kind of wonder because I've had to go out a little more than I would like, going into Tokyo and all that. But seems like a lot of people have let the air out. I mean, there's people everywhere now, and I think the mask wearing here is still pretty good, maybe compared to anywhere else in the world, but except for maybe China. But I don't know. It's getting worse. The news now in the United States is there are 2 vaccines approved, and the politicians are doing this dog and pony show, acting like they're getting the vaccine. Who knows if they actually are or not? But I don't follow the news in Japan so much as you do. What's going on with the vaccine in Japan from your perspective?
Currently, Japan is, I don't know if this is an official policy or if it's just the way that things have worked out, but Japan right now is waiting for the regulator here. I think it's 4 letters or 5 letters. I forget the name, but every country has one. The medical regulator. In the U.S., it's the FDA, right? Food and Drug Administration, isn't it? That approves, the equivalent of that in Japan.
The Cancellation,
Yeah, they're waiting for the Cancellation, They're waiting for the final verdict on rolling out which vaccine they'll roll out. But also Japan it's kind of interesting in a way. Japan has been a little bit, I don't know if more is the right word, but at least one of the things that Japan has been focused on more than, let's say, this current push to get the vaccine that was done in the US is on the medicines to reduce the actual impact, the actual pain and suffering. Pain's maybe not the right word, but the suffering and of the people who get the disease. So I guess you'd call those therapeutics or medicaments, whatever you want to call them. And the focus has not so much been on developing a unique, Japan world's first vaccine. They've left that up to the other countries, and many of other countries have been quite happy to participate in that horse race. And Japan has been focused on medicines. Now, I think we've had this discussion. I think we had this discussion way back 6 months ago, and here we're having it again. Just yesterday, we're recording this on a Sunday. So yesterday, India said in their, I'm going by the news channel of a search of a very prominent search engine. Many search engines are available. Google News. and India said they had 10,000 cases. Well, yesterday, with 770 whatever it was, it's so difficult to talk about numbers because each number has a different unit behind it. But 770 something new cases in Tokyo and all of that brings up Japan's total to 9,700 something. Again, the numbers are close, but I didn't look them up. I could look them up right now if you want. I can get that right now. Actually, let me do that so that nobody can challenge me later. Saturday, Japan, 736 daily cases, which was the second highest daily increase, bringing the monthly tally for December, up to 9,951. In the same news article, or the same news feed, India said on Saturday that the number of its coronavirus cases had exceeded 10 million. Well, okay, that's 0.1% of India's cases. And so I guess what I'm trying to say, to come back to an earlier point I was trying to make, Japan's focus on ameliorating the bad effects of people who get the disease appears to be perhaps not the wrong choice, because it's 0.1% of India. Now, I understand India's population is vastly larger than Japan's, but it's only, well, what is it now in the US, the number of cases? So Japan is still lower than that as well. So they're doing something right here, even though the cases are going up, and it is wintertime and all of that. The cases are going up, but they're doing something right. So I would say kudos and applause to them.
It sounds like it. Well, I don't know, isn't it sort of relevant to what constitutes a test and how many people have been tested? I suppose it's different in every nation, but I tend to don't really have any context for the number of cases that are, recorded or reported. The number of deaths gets my attention.
Sure. Yes, and it's tough to follow numbers. I mean, I made a mistake in an earlier short video that I made. I used a word active cases when the word was actually cumulative cases, and it's so easy to just look at a bunch of numbers on a page and spout out, here's the trend or here's whatever. But each country does actually compile their statistics in a slightly different way. There's also there appears to be, I should say, allegedly, a different definition maybe of what constitutes an active case. And so here we go. We said this 6 months ago when we last spoke. Nobody really seems to actually be able to provide empirical, unchallengeable evidence of what is really going on. What have we been doing? 2020 has gone by. What have we been doing?
Well, I've been working the whole time.
Well, yeah, so have I. But in terms of a society, what have we been doing? And I was just looking. Actually, I'll pull this up as well, just to make sure I don't misquote myself, because you know how people are in the age of the internet. You get one thing wrong and they pile on like a dog pile. Yes, Tier 4, that's the word. London has been put into Tier 4. London, United Kingdom. That's the highest level of lockdown, I believe. I don't think there's a Tier 5. Maybe there is. And it's Christmas next week. So, Merry Christmas, you're stuck at home, and you can't have people over, and you can't go out. Happy Christmas, everybody. It's a funny time.
I saw a great meme today where somebody said, or they posted, they shared it, I guess. Isn't that what a meme is? Like, government says we can have, 8 people over for Christmas with no problems. And the punchline is, I don't know 8 people that don't have problems.
Nicely done. Yes. Yeah, well, that's kind of how it is. Japan, for a reason that I'm not qualified or certified to be able to speak to. All I can say is that as a person who lives here, and so far I'm still alive, haven't died from coronavirus. All I can say is whatever the reasons are, whatever the thinking is behind it, compared to certain other countries out there, Japan seems to be doing a better job of minimizing the number of deaths that occur from this. And so, well, more power to them, I say.
Yeah, I had a death in the Japanese side of my family recently, so
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. Had to mingle with various family members. That it's most of them are older, so it's a concern. Nobody wants it at an advanced age. Well, I think nobody wants it at any age, but it's the consensus was pretty much younger people. They get it. They don't have such a hard time with it, but they do give it to the older people. And the older people are the ones that are dying and having a serious time with it.
Yes.
So that's anecdotal evidence, I guess, of just how a typical Japanese, family thinks about it, I believe.
Sure enough. Personally, I don't know. Let me think if I'm telling a lie or not. No, I'm not. I personally don't know anybody who's been seriously affected by it, although I do know some people who have had it and say it's a nasty beast. But, they're okay now, thank God. So that's good.
I have an uncle, I think he's 84.
Oh.
Or 82. In Texas who had it, and he had a pretty hard time for 4 weeks. Seems like he went to the hospital and they said, "There's nothing we can do for you," and they sent him back home, and he just had to ride it out. And I'm surprised that he came through it. He's out of it now.
Very good to know.
Yeah, quite happy about that.
I've been seeing a lot of stuff on the internet about people. Doctors, MDs, GPs, general practitioners, people with degrees that are far longer than me, lots of letters after their name, who have, despite the fact that for some reason that's bizarre to me, I really don't understand this, and I'm a pretty open-minded person, it's an opinion that appears to be unpopular, unpalatable, and sometimes even forbidden. But they're saying that, and this is not in any particular country, it just seems to be in all kinds of different countries, including Japan, by the way, that there's a lot of people who normally would have, or would normally need to have, medical procedures done on them, but because of the way that, well, everyone's scared, for good reason, they're postponing their procedures, or procedures are being postponed. I don't exactly know the source of the postponement. And that persons who would otherwise go to the hospital, get the treatment they need, are in quite a few, in an increasing number of cases, not getting it. And I think that's really sad. I think in some ways, I think maybe there's a bit too much fear. Here's why I say that. You know how it works in Japan. When you work for a company, you are required by law, your company is required by law to give you a physical checkup once a year. And you are required as an employee to take it. That's a legal requirement of your company and as you as an employee. Well, I had my annual checkup, and so I had to go to the hospital to get my annual checkup and all of that. And I was honestly a little bit scared because I was going into a hospital. And I was nervous. So I went in there. The first thing they did is they shot me right in the middle of the head with a temperature gauge. They checked out my documents, and they took my temperature, and then they talked to me for just a few minutes, just some small talk, to see if I was coughing or clearing my throat more than I normally do, or whatever. And then they said, okay, off you go, and we'll start it. And it was all fine. It was great, and it was pristine. And they would take me in, and they took my blood. And then the moment I left the chair after they took the blood, there was a person there who wiped everything down with an alcohol swab, or alcohol wipes, I should say, because there was there's lots of people go into a hospital every day. It was incredible. It was surreal in a way, but it was pristine. I mean, I could have, not to be too crude about it, but I could have, urinated on the chair and it would have been okay because they just wiped everything off when I was done at the moment. And so there really is no need to. Yeah, I know. Bad image. Sorry about that.
Not to be too crude about it.
Yeah,
no.
Not to be too. I was trying to emphasize my point. Yeah.
You got it. You made it.
Yes. They wiped everything off and it was all fine. So I don't know. Yeah, Japan's handling this, I think, quite well. It's an impressive place.
Well, I have a couple of things to say about all of that.
Yeah.
One is, yes, because of, the first thing you were saying was maybe it's related to elective surgeries.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep.
Right. But you see, a lot of things get thrown into the elective category that shouldn't.
Mm.
And what happened to my family member, where she should have had surgery, at least in February, but they held her off until I think around August, and then she finally had the surgery. And then after the surgery, the recovery period was rather serious. But we couldn't go visit her. We couldn't even call her.
They wouldn't let you in.
And so the person, she's 85 years old, and the person was, didn't have that reinforcement that you get when people are visiting you, and you get that feeling of, I've got something to live for. I've got people that love me here. It was very sad, and I'm convinced that that person would probably have another 5 to 10 years in her, even at that advanced age, if it weren't for this whole Corona thing.
Are you saying, or trying to avoid saying, would perhaps be more accurate, that she, because of the whole Corona thing, she died alone?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes. But I mean, it wasn't like she had been isolated for days or weeks on end. People had been visiting her, earlier that day.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that's not really the point. The point is, for quite a long period of time, yeah, she was just stuck there and just there, just existing, and just lacking that reinforcement that's important for recovery. I believe that human touch, that human reinforcement, and some of the things I don't know. I just think she gave up to a certain degree, and maybe that's exactly what happened. She just gave up.
That's very, very sad.
Yeah, it was.
What a weird world we're living in.
Yeah. But what you were saying, the second thing, yes, what you were talking about is the antiseptic part of it is, I had to go to several different hospitals, to deal with it. And yeah, I mean, even the older hospitals, they were like shining.
Oh,
they were clean as a whistle, man. Spotless.
It smells like the stuff you use to gargle when you have a sore throat, because the whole place has been sterilized up the wazoo.
Completely, yes.
And that was months ago, and I'm fine, so yeah, pristine. But the story of that relative who is now, I suppose, in peace, does bring me to something, one of the things I kind of wanted to chat about today in a way, and I made a short video about it. There are some people who are unable to live in peace with this new normal that we're all being forced to swallow and try and adapt our lives to.
When you say some people, what does that mean? Is there a certain type of person that's prone to not being able to deal with it? Like,
I'm talking about the people who have killed themselves. And
that's
yeah,
that's unable. Oh, definitely.
that's definitely unable to cope. I believe you've probably watched my short video,
Right.
which I posted in November the 29th, I guess it was. I'd have to look at my YouTube channel to remember the exact date that I posted it. And Japan, for some reason that is interesting, I don't know why, but the Japanese government actually does produce an official document of the number of suicides in Japan each year. That's not typical. Most countries don't do that. They have their yearly figures, and then they have their trend research on is the number of men going up, is the number of women going up, or whatever. But Japan publishes it monthly for some reason. They just do. So there you go. And I looked at it, and I'm kind of repeating what I said in my video, but for the month of October, so we're now in December, so this is 2 months ago now, or a month and a half ago, the number of people in Japan who committed suicide was higher than the entire number of people who died from coronavirus in all of 2020. That's as of October. The figures have changed for November. I've looked at those figures. And I made a video about it because, well, again, on my channel, I've also put this out there. But my close childhood friend, he killed himself. He hung himself in his garage. And he's dead. And so it's something that's kind of dear to me in a way, just because it's not a case where you're able to say goodbye. He was there, then he wasn't. And I put out that video, and there has been very, very little response or engagement, even by the modest standards of the RONJIRU Japan channel, because I'm still small, I'm still a newbie, still trying to get more subscribers, but even by the standards of my own channel. And I wondered, and this is maybe something I could get your opinion on. The numbers are correct, so that's not a problem. But is it because people don't care about the fact that some people are killing themselves, or which would be a better option if it was number two, or number two, people don't know how to have that conversation because it's uncomfortable? What do you think?
Well, probably the latter would be the quick answer. I do have a question for you, though.
Yeah.
Was there any indication in the news or the data that you had access to about, are there categories of suicides? For example, people who went bankrupt, or people who are probably going to go bankrupt, as opposed to other reasons?
Right. So the answer is yes and no. The actual government data itself only talks about numbers, which is why I specifically said, guys, these ain't numbers, these are people. But the documents that the government put out are just the number of people who have committed suicide, and they were reported as such or accepted as such. And that was unsatisfactory for me. So when I learned that news, when I saw those numbers and realized the scope of the problem, I started looking at the various websites and also articles, some articles and interviews, not so much on the internet. They were mostly in written press, so Japanese newspapers, mostly. From people who work at the suicide hotlines and the domestic violence hotlines. And what the common thread, there were 3 common threads, was, first of all, loss of job. So people who have a business, but because of Corona, whether it's, for example, we talked about 6 months ago, we talked about restaurants and anything in the hospitality industry is just fucking dead. Because despite the Goto campaign thing, maybe we'll come to that in a moment as well, but despite that, the industry has been hit so hard. Oh, there's a dog barking in my house.
That's that. Yeah, well, that's part of the dog pile, I guess you were talking about.
Maybe it is. Wow. There was that.
Let me mention something that's
Okay.
part and parcel of the suicide thing. Of course, um, anybody who knows anything about Japan knows that there's I think, a unique cultural component to suicide,
Mm-hmm.
from antiquity all the way up till now.
Yes.
20 years or so ago, I was at a friend of mine's, Japanese friend of mine's place, and he had this book about how to commit suicide. And it was a fascinating book. It was a fascinating book because it was illustrated, as most all Japanese books are. And so it was a list of X number of ways you can kill yourself. And it was fascinating because they had categorized things, according to how painful is it, how much trouble does it cause other people.
Clinical.
Yeah, very, very clinical approach to. Let me think about this. I don't know. I hope we don't get your video banned here because we're talking about suicide. But
Well, even having my video banned would be better than having it ignored, to be honest with you. So, well, no, but I'm serious. I think it's a serious issue, and I was, to be honest, a little bit. I'm still hopeful, but I was a little bit surprised. I suppose it's a difficult subject for people to deal with, but because it's a larger problem than the thing that completely and totally dominates every news channel 24/7, it's a bigger problem in terms of stacked up dead bodies, for fuck's sakes. Because of that, I would suggest that it is a bigger problem. So one of them was the lack of work. Basically lose your life savings, lose your house, inability to function. The second, I don't know if these are actually in order, but there were three. So let me just say number two, even though it may be, in terms of priorities, it may be higher or lower than the first one. That was number one. Number two was social isolation. The inability to, go back to your hometown. It kind of comes back to what you were saying earlier, to speak with your older relatives or give granny a hug. I mean, I know hugs aren't that common here, but the point is still the same. The social isolation was also one of the most common things that people would say when they would call into the hotlines to deal with it. And the third thing, again, no particular order, was just a generalized sense of anxiety. The impending sense that something absolutely terrible is here, and it doesn't matter what we do, there's really no way to ameliorate the situation. So a generalized sense of anxiety, which, if you are a person who is already faced with a lot of issues in life that are very difficult for you, to have a added level of background ambient noise, background ambient anxiety, is something that is extremely challenging, more so than somebody who doesn't have difficult circumstances as they go through their daily life. And so these three issues, I guess, compounded themselves, and the figures are the figures. And I've been in contact with other podcasters in other countries, a few, not like hundreds, but a few around the world. And, well, so far, still nobody's willing to take it up. And I think, which is why I called my short video the unknown victims of or unseen, hidden is the word I use, but unseen, because they're not hidden. The figures are there. The government produces the figures every month. So I guess maybe that's all I want to say about that. I don't know, but I just find it fascinating that we'll shut down society, close down businesses, lock people in their homes. And in the case of, for example, London, Tier 4, close down Christmas, but not take a look at the fact that those actions actually have consequences. The unintended consequences, perhaps of something that was well intentioned but not well thought out. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that my biggest concerns are for individuals that live alone at home and they are being responsible. They provisioned up. They're at home. They're minding their own business. There's only so many movies you can watch. There's only so much music you can listen to, and
Indeed.
I think it's extremely difficult for. I'll speak for my friends and family members in the United States. It hasn't been, because of the election and the way the media actually is in the United States, hasn't been conducive to good mental health. And so I've made a specific point a couple of times a week. I'm checking in on people that I'm most concerned about, just regularly on the clock. Just gives them something to talk about when we're talking, and also to look forward to between the times that we're talking. So I think the more people that have lifelines like that, the better, of course. But yes, I do feel sorry for people that don't.
Yes. They're falling through the cracks, and, well, JayTee noticed, but I would really be much more happy if more people noticed that. So that was kind of...
Now, you mentioned the Goto travel thing, and
yes.
Of course that I know people that have been taking that up, and of course I think the way it works is the government is subsidizing the places you go stay at and visit and eat at, and you get a like somebody told me the other day they went on a trip and it was just 1,000 yen a night to stay in a, not a luxury hotel, but this is Japan, so all the hotels are clean and run very well.
Yes.
So they're clean and safe. But yeah, I mean, that's great, and so it certainly has induced millions of people to move around. From my perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you certainly know more than I do because you do track the news here very closely. All that's really done, maybe economically it has helped a lot of people in the boonies, but it seems the real outcome has been that the people in the city have taken Corona to every corner of the nation.
And and indeed that is one of the ongoing debates within various levels of Japanese government. There are certain prefectural governors who shall remain nameless so that I don't get anybody into any sort of trouble. There are some people, some prefectural governors who say that one of the reasons why there's been an increase in numbers, and it appears to be, although there's, the biggest cities of course have higher numbers of people and therefore higher numbers of tests and therefore higher numbers of cases. But the fact that places that were clean and had almost no cases at all before now have let lots and are growing in number of cases could have been because or partly due to the Goto campaign. If I'm not mistaken, Kevin, I think it's up to 50% subsidy depending on the kind of trip you take. Oh, actually, that's something else. Let me just make sure I don't get that wrong either. These are strange times.
Yeah. I don't know. I was considering maybe going somewhere, but I couldn't really convince myself to do it because it just seems like I'd be forcing myself and anybody I went with into a risky situation. Whether you're stuck on the train where the windows don't open for 2 hours, or certainly not going to get on a plane anytime soon because we can't open the windows there.
Wouldn't want to try.
I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home, so I can be patient.
Right. Next topic. Let's play with it because there's no correct answer. Nobody knows. 2021 Tokyo Olympics, yes or no? I don't mean should. I mean, do you think they're going to do it?
I think they'll probably do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think an outright cancellation would happen. Uh,
Well, it did
but
this year.
I'm not an Olympic fan. I wasn't really looking forward to it, with the exception of, how it might stimulate the economy.
Sure. Yeah.
If millions of people were going to come here. But no, I don't even know how to speculate. I mean, I think something will happen, but I just don't know what.
Right. I don't understand how the organizers of the Olympics here can expect to welcome the world without some sort of a regime to prevent the world from infecting itself and Japan, then going home and infecting their countries and the rest of the world. And it's just this well, that's how pandemics work. So we'll see. I know it is a high priority, and there has been so far an enormous amount of financial resources plowed into, for example, getting the venues ready, beefing up some of the transportation links that go to and from the various venues and the major stations to the places where people will be visitors will be staying, and all of that. So a total cancellation. Yeah, I can understand why. Yeah, I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that. Nevertheless, it's not that far away, dude. We're in December now.
Right.
And it's another half year. So we had our discussion here on RONJIRU Japan 6 months ago. Now we're having another one today. In the same amount of time, it's going to be the Olympics, if it goes ahead. Not a lot of time for troubleshooting.
I don't know who would want to really come if it's a matter of the athletes coming and the games being broadcast globally, and a certain amount of Japanese people or whatever visitors come over, attending. That's the extent that I can really think about. It goes on. I don't know if it's limited or full, but the athletes are brought here and under circumstances where they're safe. And yeah, they're kept safe while they're here. They do their thing. The Olympics happen. I can imagine that, I suppose.
I guess so.
But I'm not going to any stadiums myself.
Yeah. We have this wonderful device in our homes called a television. And and I can watch all of the events and be 100% sure that my television is not going to give me coronavirus. So probably my Olympic...
Anyway.
Yeah. My Olympic
That's
watching. What's that?
Yeah. That's 10 years later when we have smell-o-vision.
The odor of sweat. Gotta love that.
You are there.
Indeed.
Well, I'm actually disappointed. Or I'd heard, a year or 2 years leading up to the Olympics, there was a lot of talk about the Japanese were going to roll out some great new video technology where, extremely high resolution, where the viewer can actually be on the field or on the court, in ways that has never been done before. So I'm still curious about that type of thing. And I had actually seen examples of some things where, I forgot what the resolution was, but it looks pretty amazing, at least the way it was pitched.
Is that the 5K TV stuff?
Possibly.
That's just mind-boggling. I did see a brief segment on a program talking about 5K, 4K. Yeah, 4K is amazing, very high-res technology. unless my camera is screwed up, I think. No, I'm 1080p. I'm not 4K. Oh well. Anyhow.
4 kilobytes.
No. What does K even stand for? 4K.
I think it's a 4,000 lines of resolution.
Okay, whatever it is. Anyways, I saw a small segment on a television program about 5K, and I have a 4K television in my house, and they were briefly showing a 5K segment. Well, by definition, a 4K television is not going to be able to accurately or adequately represent 5K footage. But they tried it, and it was almost more real than real. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't... No, okay.
More real than real. Is that like more than happy?
More than happy. Yeah. George Carlin reference, right? More than happy. No. I could walk out of my house and look at a flower, and it looks like what it looks like. But in 5K, it looks better than what it looks like when I walk out of my house and look at a flower in my front garden, for example.
Suppose it depends if it's a dead flower or not.
That was a live flower, but it's just, yeah. So in some ways, technology has gone beyond what is possible with the human biological eye. If you're allowed to say that humans have biological circumstances that affect the way that they interpret and interact with the world. Don't know if that's okay anymore. It's a weird world.
I don't think it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, demonetized, canceled. There we go. Another normal day at the...
Yeah. No more biological humans, please.
Yes. Typical day at RONJIRU Japan Towers. Towers.
But sorry, switching topics. You work for a big company.
Mm-hmm.
How, this is back to the situation in Japan here. How is that company coping? And of course, that company has huge clients. I suppose you don't have to go back into Tokyo much these days because the increase in cases. Is that what's going on?
Yes, basically, yes. My company is right in the center of the city, and I live in the outskirts, so I don't have to actually go into the office very often. Once in a while only. And the reason they did that, despite the fact that it does make things a little bit difficult in terms of having brainstorming sessions or things like that, they did that to avoid any of their employees, including myself, getting the disease. And so far that has been successful. Although the area of the city in Tokyo where my office is located did have a little spike there, and despite the fact that there was actually in my building, not my building, but the building where my office is, one of the other tenants, not my company, but the other tenants had cases, and they did a fantastic job of doing their disinfecting of the public spaces and the elevators and all that. So that's all fine. But that's the reason why they did it. So yes, that's how I guess I could say my company has coped. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's...
Well, it does. And I know the building you're talking about because I have a client in that building, and that's a very old building, and those windows do not open.
No, they don't.
And
correct.
I wouldn't imagine that the air conditioning and ventilation system in that building is the most state of the art. And I've actually been working on a project related to that type of thing. Architects are having to redesign or approach design now, even with large skyscraper buildings. They've got the ventilation there. They can't just rely on some machine to move the air in and out. They've got to be thinking about those things.
Yes.
Right. So older buildings are fine. You just open the window.
Sure.
From my perspective, the worst thing about winter in Japan is just everything's shut tight and it's just overheated.
Yes. Absolutely yes.
Sweat.
Absolutely yes. I sweat more in the winter than I do in the summer.
Same here.
Not quite, but almost.
And the trains, of course, Everybody's coated up, and all the windows are shut tight, and the heat's just blasting. So I would just think that they're just perfect for incubation, because a system for people to spread the virus to each other. But I have noticed on my train line that some of the windows do open, and they'll crack it just a little bit, but they won't open it,
Right. The subways do open the windows a little bit, which is nice. But what do you call them? Non-subway trains, land trains, whatever. The ones that don't go underground. Their windows don't open. Yeah. And they're hot. They could save enormous amounts of money if they wouldn't overheat the trains like that.
They could offset the bloody cost of the Olympics if they would just if they would just ride the throttle on those thermostats.
Everybody's already decked out in 15 layers of clothing with a big winter coat and a toque or a hat or whatever, a toboggan, whatever you call it, and a woolen hat and scarves and mufflers and gloves. Yeah. That's the thing I don't miss. That's one of the, I guess you might say, benefit. That's not even the right word to use, but a benefit of the coronavirus epidemic is I don't have to go on those trains very much anymore. So, yeah, I don't walk to work in the winter completely soaked in sweat, which is, much more productive.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. But I have enjoyed teleworking, actually. It was a bit of an adjustment. But, you get a system going, and before you know it, you're just way more productive, and you don't waste all that time and money commuting. You can get an extra hour sleep, or you can use that for private time.
Sure enough, which I do. Something about the teleworking that was surprising to me, and apparently is not as common here as one might think, but I find that, basically what you just said, I'm much more productive. It's not the train commute time and all that. No. I mean, when I say, okay, I'm logged in now and I'm going to work, and I'm sitting in my little cubby hole here at home with my little computer on my little chair, I get more done in a couple hours now than I used to get done in 3 or 4 hours when I was at the office. It's actually surprising to me. It's like, well, wait a minute. That was a 4-hour project. I'm done.
Yeah.
Now I'm on to the next project, and the day's only half over. It's incredible the amount of, or the degree to which, not having to be in an office environment actually can. I guess you have to be used to it. I mean, I think you've also worked in a situation where you didn't have to be in an office for a long time, and so did I in my past, history. Yeah. And so for me, working from home is nothing new or surprising. But I can't believe the amount of work I can get done in a couple hours now compared to when I was in the office.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the case for the average Japanese worker. I suppose if they live alone, they might like it for a little bit, but then, they get the cabin fever. Of course, there's way more meetings that can be attended now, just back to back to back to back to back, in a way that wasn't possible in the past. So that's going on. Of course, the more meetings you have, the less time you actually have left over to do actual productive work.
Yes.
But I kind of feel sorry for the breadwinners of a family that are forced to work out of a very small apartment, where getting out of the place every day is the way to make life actually tolerable for all members of the family. But yeah, people are cooped up there. I don't see how people can do it if they've got small children. If the breadwinner is a husband and the wife is a housewife, that must be extremely stressful and possibly even counterproductive.
Sure. All right. I suppose we need to both get on with the rest of our day. It's always lovely to talk with you here on the RONJIRU JAPAN podcast. Maybe we won't leave it for 6 months next time, and we can have another discussion in a couple more months and see what's going on after The new year is started. The snow has melted. The flowers are blooming. And maybe there'll be some good news that will keep us all happy and engaged.
That's what we hope for.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yep. Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in. For more insights on Japan from people who know Japan, be sure to subscribe to the RONJIRU JAPAN YouTube channel right now. Just click the subscribe button below this video and the notification bell so you'll always know when we post something new. From RONJIRU JAPAN in Tokyo, I've been JayTee. See you in the next video, everyone. O genki de ne.